What's going on, everybody? Another episode of We Are Family. What is it? 35, I think, or
Oh yeah,
35?
well 35.
35. Welcome
Colin
to
Holderman.
Colin Holderman. We love Colin Holderman here on the We Are Family podcast. He's our favorite. He's everyone's favorite reliever on the Pittsburgh Pirates. Hope he gets healthy so he can continue to give up a run an inning. But welcome to the We Are Family Pittsburgh Sports Podcast. I am Nathan Schivins, joined as always by Jake Bell and perhaps Pirate Payton. There were some circumstances that went down, and so he may or may not be joining us. But we have a packed show here. We're going to try to squeeze in a lot of big topics. Obviously, you all know the big news that went down yesterday, breaking. It finally happened. We have closure on this Aaron Rodgers saga as Aaron Rodgers, the soon-to-be first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback, the 41-year-old, has signed a 1 year, somewhere around $20 million deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he's going to report to mandatory minicamp next week. And if you'll remember, we put out a short. Pirate Payne last week was and we all kind of were feeling that as well. That if he doesn't report by mandatory, if he doesn't sign by mandatory minicamp, it's just we're done here. We can't just keep waiting here. It's gone on too long already. And wouldn't you know it, he signs right before mandatory minicamp. So, Jake Bell, just what were your instant reactions? What do you think this does for the Steelers? Does this change anything for the Steelers in 2025 in terms of contending and actually trying to win a Super Bowl, which is kind of not something on the minds of I think the people running the Steelers at this moment.
So if we're talking about like what it changes for the 2025 outcome, considering what they currently have, obviously they should have a couple more wins under Rodgers, right? I mean, he's still a competent quarterback. He's still a good quarterback, but in terms of change from last year, I don't know if we're going to see very much. I mean, the roster I feel like is generally similar, except they lost a few guys. Maybe they upgraded on their number one receiver. I'm not really sure. The Steelers definitely are going to be better than they would be with Rudolph and or sorry, Will Howard. It's just I don't know how much it's gonna equivalent to maybe taking that next step. And I'd be 100% cool with Rodgers on a 1 year deal if they drafted maybe a first round quarterback that they can maybe learn from Rodgers, but unfortunately that isn't the case. I do like Will Howard. I do like his mindset. I hope he does work out. That's kind of why I wanted to see it just be Rudolph as the starter just to start to see if maybe we can see Will Howard. But now he's going to be third or maybe even fourth on the depth chart depending on what they want to do with Skylar Thompson. But I feel like he's going to be cut. But either way, that's not that's not the point. But either way, I think that the Steelers are going to be a similar team than last year. But who knows? I mean, sometimes you get the same thing for so long, and you again do the same thing, and it completely collapses. So maybe a different result happens. I'm not sure, but if I had to put money on it, I'd say we'd see a similar season as we did last year.
Yeah, I agree completely with you, Jake. I think this was a move that was kind of forced on the Steelers because they took so long. They kind of felt that pressure, and they were kind of desperate. They kind of were at this point because, like you mentioned, they didn't take a first round quarterback. They draft Will Howard in whatever round, fifth or sixth round, and they roll in with Mason Rudolph as the potential starter before signing Rodgers. And yeah, you look at the Steelers now. Are they improved? Yeah, of course they are because Aaron Rodgers, even at the age of 41, is still has game in him, left in him, and we saw that last year with the Jets. Was he great? No, but he was solid on a very bad team, I would add. But uh, so does this make the team better compared to this time yesterday or this time Wednesday? It does, but like you said, I think many Steeler fans still see that same 9-8 kind of 10-7 season. Especially you look at the schedule, you get the Ravens twice a year again. Obviously, you get the Bengals twice a year, and they're gonna be improved, I think, as well. But you play the Bills, you play at Detroit, you play Minnesota. There's a lot of difficult games. You play at Cleveland at the end, where that's been a house of horrors for the Steelers. So I still see 7, 8 losses, and it's still very early. You know, the schedule. We people love to now we have a schedule in front of us. Pick they're going to win this game and lose this game or whatever. But those are going to be tough games now, and they're going to be tough games when they're played. So I still think, and I still don't trust this defense. I really don't. Every year they're like, oh, but it's the highest paid defense. That means it must be excellent. Well, have we seen them at the end of each season, these past few seasons, they've gone off a cliff defensively, and I mean in the playoffs it's just a mess. But what I mean, and that's not to say oh the defense is the problem, but it certainly is not helping the cause at the end of these seasons when you need it most. Like last year, they needed the defense the most to help just like keep them in these games while Russell Wilson kind of has his late season struggles, and they did the opposite. They gave up a lot of points, a lot of yards. That Kansas City game really comes to mind, but I mean the Baltimore, all those games really come to mind as to those defensive performances that weren't up to par. So I still think when it comes down to it, if it is a game to decide if they're going to go to the playoffs or try to win a playoff game, I just think they'll come up short again. And I know this is all speculation and nothing. The season hasn't even started yet, but I just don't see this team improving so much so that they can even win a playoff game and advance, let alone win multiple and get to the AFC Championship or the Super Bowl. I still think they need more. I think they need a quarterback that's even better than Aaron Rodgers is right now. But to be fair, the Steelers obviously they didn't take a first round quarterback because they didn't believe in any of them, other than maybe Cam Ward, and he was never going to go to the Steelers. Obviously, they were never going to be able to take him. So their hands were very tied this off season, but a lot of that was their doing by waiting so much, letting Fields sign with New York, letting Russ sign somewhere else, and I know Aaron Rodgers probably is marginally better than Russ potentially. I don't even know who knows, but you had to wait several more months just to get a decision here, and I don't think he's generally liked by Steelers players. I mean, we saw that Deshaun Elliott was like, I can't remember what he said, but he was like, "We don't want you here." Cam Hayward kind of was saying kind of similar things. So I just I don't know how this is going to work out, but we know for sure there's going to be a lot of storylines. There's going to be a lot of eyeballs on the Steelers, mostly not for on-field performance, but about Aaron Rodgers, about him week one at the Jets, Sunday Night Football against the Packers, against the Vikings in London or wherever they're going to be. I think there's or not. What am I? I don't even know. But just all the different games and these headlining games that involve Aaron Rodgers is going to make it a lot more compelling. And at this point, that's what the Steelers are. They're not about winning football games more necessarily. They're more about look at all these eyeballs. You want to get these eyeballs on our team. It feels like honestly because I mean, is their goal really to just make the playoffs every year? That's what it seems like.
Yeah, and if you look at kind of like a trend in the NFL, like look at all the quarterbacks that have been competing for Super Bowls, right? Like most, if not all of them, are homegrown. It's Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow can make it far in the playoffs. Josh Allen makes it to the AFC Championship every year. So you kind of see this trend. It's always these homegrown guys that develop within one team that drafted them, that believed in them, and they were able to develop really well. And the one case that wasn't, or the two cases that didn't happen within the past, I don't know, 5 or so years, it was Tom Brady and Matthew Stafford. One, Tom Brady is the GOAT. Two, Matthew Stafford costed multiple first round picks to get him. And you get guys like Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers who their team pretty much told them, hey, we don't want you anymore. So you have to kind of look at it from that perspective and say, hey, maybe the veteran quarterback who relies more on their defense and the run game, that might not work out anymore. And it's just a whole new different landscape of the NFL that I don't think. And to be fair, Tomlin has had so much success with the defense first mentality, but still, it's so hard to go up against guys like Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, who work hard, study well, are always put in great situations for them to succeed as an individual. And you kind of, it just makes it so much more tough on the defense, no matter how much you spend on it, no matter what your game plan is. I mean, it just makes it much more difficult. So you kind of need that quarterback to sort of counter that. You need a quarterback that can go up against these guys to compete for a Super Bowl, right? I just don't. I don't know how much a veteran 1 year fix is going to work again like they tried last year. And I'm not going to be too harsh on them, obviously. I know they don't have much more of a quarterback plan. You have to fall in love with the first round quarterback for it to work. I think they look at the Kenny Pickett situation and say, hey, we can't draft a first round quarterback and only have him be a 2 year starter. We just can't have that happen anymore. That's just not good. Um, I, I like I don't know the term for it, but to kind of like use of draft capital, I should say. That's just not a good use of your first round pick. And so I don't think the Steelers want to do that again. They'd rather use that 1 year, hey, we're not committed to you type thing until they finally get a quarterback that they really feel will work for them. But they have to get a quarterback that they need to develop, like almost a project type, unless you get that foreshore guy. But the Steelers don't draft early enough to draft that foreshore guy like a Joe Burrow who threw 60 touchdowns in college. Like they're going to have to maybe invest in a project that they have to develop. But I don't know if they're willing to do that because you have a defensive minded head coach. He wants the defense to be as good as possible, and he wants the quarterback to keep the defense off the field, to have long sustained drives, and sometimes you just need that killer that can make a big play for you. So it'll be interesting to see what they do in next year's draft. Obviously, they have a lot of draft capital, and with Aaron Rodgers most likely giving them a draft pick from 15 to 25 overall, it's going to be so much more difficult to trade up. So it's interesting to see what they'll do here.
That's the big point I want to talk about too. Here is now what this does. And we talked about it before. The signing, assuming Rodgers would end up signing with the Steelers, they're not going to pick. They're going to pick in the same spot generally as they normally do, unless in this upcoming draft they have a massive trade up, which we could see them doing now because they have so many draft picks. But that's what they would have to do because I don't see the season kind of going off the rails with the players that they have. Um, so they probably will be slotted to pick somewhere between, yeah, somewhere like 18, 19, 20, like they are every year, like a broken record. And and I just want to talk about this upcoming draft class of quarterbacks. So we talked about this a little bit, Jake. I don't think it's as good as these kind of experts, these draft experts are saying. I mean, at the top it's Drew Aller, and I like Drew Aller. Obviously, we're Pitt guys, but I like Drew Aller. I like some of what I've seen. Obviously, all he had was a monster tight end this past season. He really didn't have any receivers, but I think I still need to see more from him this season. I need to see a lot of different stuff to believe in him as that franchise quarterback, because that's what the Steelers obviously need. They need that franchise quarterback to try to compete with the Lamar Jacksons, the Joe Burrows, the Mahomes, the Allens. And I just don't know if that's what he is. I think Cade Klubnik. I like Cade Klubnik. I think he played a lot better last year than the year prior, this past season and the year prior. But I still don't know yet. I just think with a lot of these guys, and obviously Arch Manning, we haven't even seen him much at all yet. And people are saying, oh, he's going to go, first or second quarterback taken. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty still that there is that franchise guy out there for the Steelers in this 2026 draft.
Yeah, it's so tough because the season hasn't even started yet. It's so hard to know what quarterbacks are going to go in the first round, right? Let's go back to the 2022 class. Everyone was like, "Oh, Sam Howell and Spencer Rattler, they're going to be battling for the number one pick." Howell becomes a sixth round pick, and Rattler has to stay in college, and then Pickett becomes the first quarterback taken. Like who would have thought? So it's all kind of it's so tough to really know what quarterbacks are going to be very good. You kind of have to look at the production and the skill set, but feels like every year mock drafts they have like 10 quarterbacks going in the first round. It's just not realistic. So I honestly don't know much about this quarterback class other than guys that are returning. We might see someone that just goes completely under the radar and becomes a very good quarterback
Eli
and
Holstein,
highly
I
touted.
think Eli Holstein is really that guy that's going
Oh yeah, I
to.
actually like Holstein a lot, but
He's
but
going to be the
no,
guy
like it.
to lead to get the Steelers trade up to get Eli Holstein. And that would be terrible actually, but
Yeah, that would
and
be hilarious. That would be just full circle. Like I was a senior in high school whenever Pickett got drafted. Maybe being a senior in college, we'll see Holstein get
wow.
drafted. Be
But
crazy.
I mean, I would hate that as a Steeler because they'll ruin him
Yeah, they
probably.
would. A guy that's so
Um,
disciplined, they would ruin him. Like
uh,
Holstein's the most disciplined quarterback I think in Pitt history.
and not even from the coaches of like the hatred he'll get from
Yeah.
the fan base who aren't Pitt fans.
Yep.
We saw that with Pickett. If he had one maybe mediocre game, oh, he's the worst, quarterback ever.
Yeah.
Just the berating, which is really it was really crazy. It was
Yeah.
really
It was.
mind-boggling for me to see. It was shocking for me to see just the vitriol that he got from Steeler fans. But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, you're right. It's hard to we see that going into seasons. Oh, this quarterback's here, this quarterback's there, and then that quarterback has a terrible season or something. And then maybe somebody nobody was talking about is a great season. So who knows? We're just speculating. It's too early to fully know. Um, but it will be interesting because there has to be some franchise guys for the Steelers, honestly, because they need that. They can't do another year of this after 2025. We were saying we were hoping that 2024 is the last year of this kind of QB shuffle, and we went in with Rudolph and with Will Howard, and we played the season out. And if we had a not so great year, that's not the worst thing in the world. Let's get a franchise guy and move this thing forward and have some stability at the position. But now we're gonna kick the can down the road for another season, and it's gonna be. I mean, it's gonna be 9-8. It's gonna be 9-8, 10-7. It's gonna be something like that. And maybe they sneak in the playoffs. They won't do anything. Don't worry. Don't get your hopes up. Sorry, Steeler Nation. Don't be going crazy here. Oh, they got better at every position. Maybe marginally, and and that they're still not anywhere close to the Buffalo Bills, the Kansas City Chiefs, Baltimore. They're just not. So that's so in that sense, like my instant reaction is like, yes, it's over, and it's kind of funny. Aaron Rodgers is now here in Pittsburgh. It's just like a funny result, but then the second kind of takeaway is oh, brother, it's gonna be another one of those years, and Steeler fans are gonna get their hopes up, and Aaron Rodgers is gonna have similar years last year, and we'll finish it with a similar record as last year, and it'll be the same old kind of issues. I think I mean, why would it be anything different? So, anything else to add on that, Jake, about Rodgers? I know you're so excited.
No, not too much. I think obviously it's the move the Steelers want to make if they want to have the best season possible with what they could have gotten. But I just don't know if it's going to move the needle. So, but we'll have to see. You never know. We've seen crazier things. So,
Right? Yeah, for sure. So I want to pivot a little bit to the Pirates. We'll talk a little bit about them. So they had a 3-3 road trip. Um, Obviously, pretty surprising. I think 3-3 we would have absolutely taken going into that road trip because at Arizona, we've detailed it. We talked about that last week a little bit. We never win there. And San Diego, we really never win there either. A lot of these West Coast teams, I just don't remember the Pirates having any success except for Colorado, I guess. But and they take 2 or 3 from Arizona. The offense is on fire, and then they proceed to have that first game in San Diego where the obvious blown call on Henry Davis. It was clearly low. He had a great at bat there, working the count, and they had their closer in Robert Suarez, who's just lights out. It's just almost impossible to hit against him. And you thought you got that break, right? We got that break. He's kind of all over the place and instead a minor league umpire got called up. He rung him up, and that kind of set the tone in the game. They weren't going to get another run. They lose that one, and then they get that win on Saturday. That was nice, but then on Sunday they should have at least taken 2 or 3. They were in complete control of that game, and for some reason, Don Kelly, who we've praised here, I think we do like Don Kelly. We like some of the things he's done, a lot of the things he's done, but bullpen management in some situations has not been the best, I think, for him. And case in point, which really one of the dumber moves I've seen, honestly, bringing in Tanner Rainey, who obviously is one of, at the very back, very front end, I guess, of your bullpen because you put him in games that are kind of out of hand, or you're not going to come back and win, or you're up by a lot, and you can afford to put him in. Instead, you put him in a 2-run game in the seventh inning against the meat of the Padres order, because you like his slider. Well, I don't like his fastball, and the Padres really liked this. They liked his slider. They liked his fastball. They got 4 runs in that inning, and they end up winning 6-4. Just a crushing loss. And we saw the Astros took 2 or 3 from the Pirates. That's kind of what we thought would happen. And for the Pirates, they need to kind of string together these series wins. Kind of to try to get anything close to back to 500 and kind of have a more respectable season. And now they were winning 2 out of 3 a couple times. We saw that, but now it's back to they've lost 2 out of 3 here, and they got the Phillies coming up this weekend. So what are your takeaways just from what we've seen in the past week? The Pirates kind of just some ups and downs, and maybe also talk about Paul Skeens, who just had another tremendous start through one bad pitch, and it was a bad pitch. It was the terrible pitch just served up to Christian Walker, who crushed it down the left field line, but deserved much, much better in that first game against the Astros.
Yeah, it's kind of this stretch, like Padres, Diamondbacks, Astros. It's kind of what I expected. Lose a series, win a series, lose. That's kind of what I expected going into this season. So there's not too much. I was shocked. Like you mentioned, the Tanner Rainey decision. I think that was the first like like decision that Kelly made where I think he realized, like I think he realizes that wasn't the decision to make, especially with Rainey being DFA'd the next day. Like obviously it was kind of a life or death situation for Rainey to be put in that situation because as we found out, like just that one bad game is going to result in him being designated for assignment. So definitely, I think Kelly will learn from that. Right, he is a new manager. He's going to learn from stuff like this, especially with inheriting a team that started off 12-26. Like there's going to be a lot of bumps down the road, but I think he's going to learn from this, and I think that he's going to be better off whenever the season ends. As for the Padres game, I know we haven't really mentioned because obviously we didn't have an episode whenever this happened, but the Henry Davis missed call, and it was a ball. It was 100% ball, but I think that he realizes that maybe I should have protected there. Umpires are a human error. I'm not saying forgive umpires for making bad calls, but whenever you go into an at bat, you can't let the umpire dictate the at bat, right? If you have 2 strikes, you have to be in protective mode. Even if you're in a full count, you have to be in protective mode. I'd rather you foul off ball 4 that misses the plate by an inch than take strike 3. Like you just have to be competitive up there. I think Henry Davis knows that. I'm not excusing the call. That's a bad call. That's honestly maybe a pitch that's too tough to protect. But whenever you have 2 strikes, you have to buckle down. You have to foul any pitches off, have a short swing, have a short compact swing so that maybe you do get fooled on that curveball. You have a short enough swing to where you can make that quick decision and foul it off. But I think he's going to learn from that. It's weird because we saw Henry Davis go all the way at the highest point of his career, arguably, with the Diamondback series, and then that call happened, and I don't think he's gotten a hit since. So hopefully he learns from this. I mean, with Joey Bart out, this is a huge opportunity for Henry Davis to stay on the roster, especially, look at the Astros series. The one game Andy Rodriguez caught, he goes 1 for 3 with a double. The Pirates shut out the Astros. So definitely something to keep in mind with that. Just going off the series alone, but yeah, not too much more that I would expect. This is again, other than the 12-26 start, I'd expect the Pirates to take turns winning and losing a series. That's just I think what we all thought. So
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I don't remember you had them. Do you remember what your prediction was? I had them at 81-81 this season because I thought they would just be a very mediocre kind of 500 ball club. But
I
obviously,
want to
that's
say I had the same. I
I
could be
think I
wrong
thought
about
we
that.
had like right around the same
Yeah,
because I thought the way they played under Kelly would be the way they played, throughout the season. I just didn't think they were going to challenge for the division. I thought it was possible, but I thought a lot of things would have to go their way. And but obviously that 12-26, nobody could have predicted that. I mean, because that was just a complete. It was just the offense was historically awful, and they've picked it up lately. Still not great, but they've been better obviously. And you make a great point with Davis, and people were saying that too. Like with 2 strikes, you have to be in protection mode. especially against a guy like Robert Suarez who throws just nasty stuff. And has that fastball that gets way upper 90s. You have to be in protection mode because he could just blow that pitch by you. I honestly think like Davis, I just and I would have this mindset because I mean I'm not a major league player, but like his stuff is so good. I gotta, and he's kind of out of control. Is he gonna land a strike against me? I don't know. And obviously that's probably not the mindset you should have, but it's an understandable one. Again, I don't know if that's what he was thinking, but he took that pitch all the way. You know, that at least what it looked like to me. And you're right about the protection, but it was, I mean, it was just, it was at least like, it was three baseballs low, I think, and
A
almost a
hundred
little bit
percent.
wide. And Davis was seeing the ball well, especially Arizona series and going into that game. And I think he knows the strike zone. And I really hope that wasn't something that kind of took his confidence down or messed with him mentally because that stuff that he was doing in Arizona certainly he can replicate. And he hit the ball hard his final at bat last night the other way, which I like seeing him going the other way a little bit too. That shows like you're on time and your approach is kind of working a little bit. And but it was just a nice play by Cam Smith and Wright for the Astros to make a nice play. But yeah, I really hope he performs at his best because we talked about this last week. This season now has come down to you're not going to make the playoffs. It's just it's not going to happen unless this offense starts, you know, playing like they're top 10 or around there in baseball because you have to make up so many games that you're under 500. So this year is a lot of it is about just developing some of these hitters, some of these younger players. It is kind of crazy now. They've been such a young team the past several years, but now you look at this roster. There's a lot of veterans now, and you look at the only ones that are kind of you could say Nick Gonzalez. You could obviously Henry Davis, Andy Rodriguez. You could even throw in there Joey Bart because he hasn't played too much in the big leagues uh, since he's been called up. But there's not too many, younger guys, and Canario, I guess, but there's not too many younger guys. But what you want to see is those guys taking the next step this season, where maybe it doesn't lead you to the playoffs this year, but maybe next season they are trusted and reliable bats, maybe in the middle to the bottom part of your order to lengthen out this lineup even more. And I think the big guy, per player I'm looking at is Andy Rodriguez because I love his swing. I really do. That double hit was a great, but that was the only hit he's had since he's been back. But it was a nice swing. It was and he was like kind of I think he's still working on his timing a little bit since coming back. He was striking out a little bit on some off speed pitches. But I think Andy Rodriguez, I think he's gonna hit. I really do. But if there's any team that could kind of stunt that, it would be the Pirates with what we've been seeing, unfortunately. But I do think he has the tools. I think Davis has the tools as well. I mean he that's what he was known for out of Louisville. He absolutely raked at Louisville, and he was actually known as like not the greatest defensive catcher. Now it's completely flipped. He's now a tremendous defensive catcher, one that you would like to put in if he doesn't start in later game situations, but his hit tool is still lagging behind. I think there's improvements there, but I still think there needs to be more. And I think keeping him up on the major league roster instead of a Jared Triolo, who had a couple hits, against Framber Valdez. Oddly enough, nobody could hit him except for Jared Triolo, who's just hitting the ball hard everywhere against.
That's baseball.
No, it is. But he's hitting 160, and this is multiple years now. I really liked him in 2023. I think we all did. He hit almost 300, but it's kind of been we've seen enough here on a team that can't hit. I think you got to give somebody with more upside, like a 1-1, especially from Ben Cherington's position. I drafted this guy 1-1. I gotta keep him on this. We got to figure something out here. We got to develop him, which is why I think maybe he stays with the team when Bart gets activated instead of maybe if one of the catchers goes down, maybe it's Endy instead of Henry. But I would hope all three stay up because I just think you could place one of them at different positions. You could DH sometimes, give Kutch a day off, or put Kutch in the outfield one day. And even like we were saying this, we talked about this last episode, but man, it was like so obvious. Like Joey Bart should have been getting some reps at first base this off season and in spring training because you knew he wasn't the greatest defensive catcher. Now, granted, Henry Davis still wasn't, the defensive phenom. I don't even want to say phenom, but how great he's been defensively. He wasn't quite that going into spring training and everything. But it was clear that he was the worst of the catchers offensively, and they brought in Spencer Horwitz clearly as a platoon player, and we've seen like against lefties he's just not very good. He's not looked very good against lefties, so that's like an obvious. Oh, we could have Bart DH a little bit. He could catch sometimes, but he could play first base against a lefty to give Horwitz kind of that day off. You don't want him necessarily facing lefties all the time. But again, like it's just these kind of things that you think a front office would be thinking about, and they just didn't. And now we're in this situation where one of them may probably has to go down instead of developing all three of them and giving them really invaluable reps at the big league level in 2025.
Right, and with the Bart situation, I the only way I can maybe understand keeping him at catcher is because of how well he did offensively. Maybe you don't want to have him learn a new position, have that, have him struggle offensively. But he's been struggling offensively now, and if this was something that you develop in the winter through spring training, he no longer like now he's learned first base. I mean, first base every position is hard, but first base isn't. It's not like you're going from right field to like shortstop. It's not. This isn't going to be some crazy positional change where your offense is just going to be terrible because you're so focused on learning this new position. I feel like Joey Bart, he seems to care about the team and the players. I think if you move him to first base, I think he'd be fine with that. I mean, the Pirates gave him a shot to play a lot and he played well last year. I mean, the Giants DFA'd him. It looked like he could bounce around a few different teams, but then obviously he turned it around with the Pirates. But I think that if you have Bart at first base, I truly feel like he has a few more homers because now he's not worrying about an entire pitching staff. He's not he's not worrying about trying to be this plus defender because the Pirates are putting so much faith in him when they have two top prospects in Endy Rodriguez or former top prospects in Endy Rodriguez and Henry Davis. He no longer has that stress, and if you just have him solely on his bat, obviously I truly feel like he put more offensive output. I mean, you see this a lot in different guys, right? I mean, look at Kyle Schwarber. He's no longer a catcher. He's awesome offensively. Like it's sometimes a decision you have to make. There's only so many catchers that can do it both offensive and defensively. That's why you see so few highly offensive talented catchers. It's just so hard to do and also command a pitching staff. It's why Buster Posey was just incredible, and someone like Joe Mauer until he had to move to first base later in his career. But yeah, it's just so tough to do. And with a guy like Joey Bart, you need him for his bat. And to me, that I think that's something the Pirates may regret later on, knowing that this could have been a possibility. So, but I get it though because he was so good offensively as a catcher. You don't want to mix anything up. But at the same time, first base, I feel like he'd make that easy transition, knowing how much he cares about the players and everything. So.
Yeah, and it would kind of like you're saying it would if you move to first base, it would take kind of that pressure off of like having to understand so much and have to think so often as you are as a catcher. Just all the stuff that goes into it. You're right. I mean, it's such a tough position just to. I mean, it's probably the hardest position because you have to know so many different things, and you gotta do all the stuff with the pitching staff. You gotta know the pitchers, what their pitches are, what ones will work in different situations, and then in the next half inning, I gotta hit too. I think for someone like him, you're right. He was really struggling right before he went on the concussion IL. Just take his mind off of that, and I think a move to first, kind of would allow him more to, if he was like ready and ready to play first, he would be able to kind of take his mind off that and just focus on hitting and doing the basics of first base. But now obviously he hasn't played first, and so if he did a move to first base now, he has to learn first base on the fly. He would have to learn first base on the fly as well as hitting still and trying to get out of his funk. So now I just think it's kind of a tenuous position for him as well, and just for Davis and Rodriguez as a whole. But yeah, I mean his offensive production kind of waning this season. it's kind of one of the bigger reasons why I think this offense has been where it's at. And I know, Tommy Pham, it's been well documented. He hasn't hit very well. Jared Triolo, some of these guys, but I was expecting a lot kind of similar production out of Joey Bart in a full season with the Pirates this season in 2025 after 2024 when he showed a lot of power. He showed he brought in runs at a very good rate, and his catching was okay, but that's fine. It wasn't like terrible where you're noticing it and it's costing you runs and stuff. He was a solid defensive catcher, and I still think he's a solid. I don't think he's a great defensive catcher, obviously, but I don't think he's like terrible or anything. Anyway, where if he had to start a game or two, I would be completely fine with that. But it does seem like his production now, only having one homer, however many at bats he had, and 11 RBIs, he wasn't, and they were walking him a lot. Teams were walking him a lot this season. But even so, like, and he just missed like three or four homers just on that the road trip with the Mets and Phillies. Then the next homestand, he was just missing some homers. But his power and his run production not being there this season, I think was a bigger one of the bigger reasons. Obviously, Brian Reynolds struggles and all that, but why this Pirates offense hasn't been nearly what we thought it could be, which wasn't even crazy high expectations.
Right, and maybe like what you mentioned with Reynolds and Bart struggling in the middle of the lineup, maybe you consider moving Cruz back to the middle of the lineup at that point. I know how effective he has become as a leadoff hitter, but if he's still driving the ball at a high rate, sometimes you need that in the middle of the lineup whenever you have guys on base before that, right? I mean, the only way, like obviously, him getting on base, stealing second, that like he's the fastest guy on the team. That's so valuable as a leadoff guy, but at the same time, you need to get these runs in. It almost doesn't matter how fast these guys are sometimes. So it's it's a decision maybe they might have to make. I don't know. Maybe you don't mess with a good thing. Cruz right now has a career high OPS right now. So maybe you don't want to mess with that, but at the same time, you got to get some runs in. And I know, like you mentioned, the offense has looked better. They looked more of what we expected going into this year. But at the same time, you can't rely on the pitching to do well. I mean, we saw that yesterday. Keller, for despite his 1-7 record going into yesterday, he was pitching very well, and he just didn't have it yesterday. And the offense just couldn't make up for it. So you almost have to maybe consider having Cruz in the middle of the lineup just so that maybe you can get guys on for him to drive you in, because if Reynolds and Bart aren't doing that, you need someone to do it. So
Yeah, and to your point, me and Payne were talking about this yesterday. We were on MLB Now. Brian Kenny was talking about how Shohei Ohtani leading off. Obviously, it's a completely different situation. The Dodgers are a historically great offense. The Pirates are not. But Ohtani hitting leadoff, obviously, for that team. And you got, Betts and Freeman right behind him, and someone like Oscar Hernandez, or Will Smith, who's had a tremendous season as well, hitting cleanup in the five spot. But there's like an argument, and like there's like these analytics that show the Dodgers would score more runs with Ohtani hitting cleanup rather than at the leadoff spot. And that's kind of like the rich get richer kind of situation. Anyway, like it's they're still scoring more runs than anybody almost in baseball, and it would make a kind of just a little bit of a difference for them maybe. But for a team like the Pirates, O'Neal Cruz, I feel like if they put him, to your point, at the three or the four spot, I want him driving in runs. I want him, for all his strikeout issues, which are getting worse. It seems like this, which is something that, although he's had that career high OPS, he's striking out a lot right now. He's like tied for second or first in the National League at strikeouts, and he doesn't even have as nearly as many at bats as like an Ellie De La Cruz or somebody like that. So that's definitely an issue, and he didn't look good against Valdez, but it was left. Valdez is just tremendous, but um, I would like to see him more in that three or four spot and have someone like IKF who's been just raking right now. I mean, this is more than anyone could have asked from IKF. I mean, he's hitting over 300, and when he's been in run opportunities to drive and runs, he hits bases clearing doubles down the line. and driving in all these runs. So I like IKF at the top if they were to do something like that to get him as
Can
many.
I just interrupt you real quick? I
Yeah,
think IKF, I think he'd be perfect in the two hole because he does well situationally. You know, if you have that leadoff guy that gets on first, IKF is not afraid to move a runner over. He's not afraid to hurt his batting average. He still hits for a better average than anyone on the team anyway. But either way, he's someone that does well situationally. I think that's why Cherington was willing to move from Charles McAdoo, who hasn't been doing very well, by the way. So that actually looks good on his part. But I think IKF would work in the second hole for sure. I just don't know who you would have leading off though. That's the thing. So
yeah, that's the issue with the Pirates here for several years now. Just not having that leadoff guy, that bona fide leadoff guy who has the combination of speed and on base. Now, Cruz technically is that guy. He's getting on base a lot. I love his approach when he's not swinging. He either is uber aggressive and just swinging a lot of pitches and striking out, or he's just taking every pitch and he's walking. He's walking at a really high rate this year, which is great to see. He's getting on base. He has that speed and he has the power. But I would just love to see him in a more run uh, scoring situation where he could drive in runs. He only has like 28, 29 RBIs this season because he's been leading off. But they just don't. Other than him, they don't have that guy. And Kutch obviously gets on base still a lot, but you don't want him running, very much. He doesn't. His speed is obviously he's 38 now. It's not. He's not getting any faster. So the Pirates have been in that dilemma for several years now of who would be a good leadoff guy. But we have seen obviously the Phillies with Kyle Schwarber for a while, these power hitters leading off, and someone like Tatis who's a kind of more of a power hitter leading off instead of a Luis Arias and trying to get a 1-0 start early. But I'd rather Cruz being up with two guys on and it's 3-0 instead of 1-0 early on in a game.
no, I 100% agree with that. And it like you mentioned, like the Dodgers, they can afford to have Shohei leading off, right? Because of they have Freddie Freeman, who leads the National League in batting average, that can drive him in anyway. But with the Pirates, like being a small market team with maybe not as much of the star power, you have to do whatever you can to produce runs. And with everyone having their power hitter leading off, maybe you have to go back to a more old school approach to do something different to see if you can get a different result. So maybe you have, I don't know, even if you don't want Kutch leading off, maybe against righties you experiment Frazier. I mean, he's been in that role before. He hasn't he's somehow like in the top half of batting average on the team, which I don't think we really expected. So maybe you experiment with that. Maybe have him lead off, have IKF up second, see if those guys can get on base, or at least have someone in scoring position with run out, so that maybe you have Cruz up third, or maybe Reynolds. I know he's bound to bounce back. So
Yeah, I mean, Frazier, I don't want to. I know he's not going to be playing too much anymore because Nicky G's back,
right,
but he did an admirable job filling in. I mean, like you mentioned, I thought a lot of us, most people thought he would have a similar season we did last year because he's been kind of on a slow decline here in production since the Pirates traded him to San Diego in 2021. But I mean, he's been when he has had runners on, he's driving them in. He's hit 3 homers already, and he's hitting 250. And there was a stretch there where he was just getting robbed every at bat too, so he could even be have a higher average. And so that is, I mean, might as well experiment, right? I mean, it's not like it's gonna hurt anything. Just to find different lineup orders to try to figure out just if this offense can reach another level somehow. So
yeah, and why not? Right. I mean, the season hasn't gone the way that they wanted. Might as well try something different. What are you going to do? Be worse? I mean, you might as well try the experiment, right? So
100%. So we'll see. The Pirates got the Phillies coming up this weekend. The Keystone State rivalry. Can the Pirates respond to being swept by the Phillies and have a sweep of their own? I'm calling it. No, I'm not actually. but
hey, first sweep of the year. That would be
it would
nice.
be. Can you believe that the Rockies just got a sweep of the Marlins and they have a longer winning streak than the Pirates have had all year? It was just insane. they need to get a winning streak here. 3 game, and then they got the Marlins coming up. So we'll see what the Buccos can do here. And yeah, so I want to move on a little bit to just to briefly mention the Indiana Pacers because that was just a crazy game last night. The Pacers in Game One of the NBA Finals, they led for zero point 0.3 seconds in that game, which was the last zero point 0.3 seconds because Tyrese Halliburton, just incredible. I mean, his numbers scoring wise don't jump off the page at all. He had 18, 19 points a game in his career, and he only had 14 points last night. But in every big moment, he not only comes up clutch, he does it in the most improbable ways. I mean, obviously the Cavs game, they get the rebound in game two. They get the rebound off the missed free throw, and Halliburton goes back to the 3-point line and hits that three to win game two for them, which really was the turning point of that series. And then obviously in game one against the Knicks, just the improbables going back to the 3-point line again and that hitting the ball off the back iron and bouncing in just and then in this game, obviously, Pacers were down. They just did not play well. 25 turnovers in the game, 19 in the first half. They looked completely unprepared and out of sorts, and they just hung around. And even I've been like, every game I still have that in the back of my head, like they could come back and win this even when they lose. But I got to be honest, for this one, it just looked like OKC. OKC's the best team they faced in these playoffs, obviously too. And they're right there now. Oh, now it's up to what's 14 points. It was like a 14-point lead very late. Surely they can't come back from this. OKC is going to be able to score a little bit and match them. But instead, the Pacers it was just out of nowhere. It was just a quick 8-0 spurt to get them within two, and then they get down three, and then they get down by one off of the rebound by Siakam, put it back in, and then they get the stop and go the other way, and Halliburton hits that jump shot, which, I mean, everybody, even though it shouldn't be like that, he's so clutch, everybody probably had that feeling it's going to go in. So, I mean, if that's game one's any indicator, this should be a heck of a series.
Yeah, and going off of Halliburton, I mean, he's reminding us that points per game isn't the end all be all when seeing who's a superstar and who's not. I mean, with the NBA, everyone's scoring high. I mean, look at his opposition, SGA, averaging well over 30 points a game. Like, that's become the norm for these superstars. And you forget that Halliburton is very similar. Like, you look at the point guards now, they're a lot more of a scoring, maybe more ball dominant than they ever were. It used to be the traditional controlling the court, pass first type of point guard. But now it's completely different. Halliburton really does both, if we're being honest, like kind of a mix of both, and he's very efficient too. I mean, it's crazy how he's actually the best matchup to beat the Thunder, who have been historically great defensively. I mean, I think he's it's a perfect matchup because Halliburton doesn't turn the ball over. The Thunder have this great defense, so that's the one player that could really counter that. And he's proving why he's one of the superstars in the NBA. I mean, you can look at points per game. It's not the end all be all. I mean, with any debate you have, either player, you can't use points per game, and Halliburton is showing that very much. He's just been so efficient. I haven't really watched much of the NBA playoffs, but just looking at what he does specifically, I mean, he's definitely incredible. So.
Yeah, and you talk about and SGA had a great game too.
Hmm.
And again, like you talked about, he doesn't turn the ball over. Well, he actually, and you're right, absolutely right. He turned it over to like several. He was just, it looked like early, and he said it. He was kind of mic'd up, and he said it on it was like on the broadcast. He was like, I'm a little out of sorts, but I think I'm good now or something. And like from that point on, he's just like a really likable guy. And I mean, he just turns it up a notch after that point, and then kind of leads that team back. And SG, I don't want to discount him too because he does average, he averages a ton of points a game, but he also is really good at facilitating as well. Just Halliburton's just on another level in that he just leads this team and almost a pass first guy. And so we'll see. It should be a great series. Thunder, you'd think would respond in game two. They really have to. They don't want to be trying to go down 2-0 again. Like just ask the Knicks, just ask the Cavs. about going down 2-0 to the Pacers in the NBA playoffs. So we'll definitely be monitoring that too. The Oilers got a win in game one as well. I know Peyton's very happy about that. His team, the Oilers, apparently now it's his team. So we will monitor that as well. But I want to close this episode here. By the way, Pirate Bay will not be joining us, but unfortunately. But just know he's very excited for Aaron Rodgers being in Pittsburgh. But Jake, just to close out, I know you had a fun little exercise about Ben Cherington's trades as since becoming Pirates GM following the 2019 season. So you kind of ranked them based on. I'll let you kind of explain it. So, what do you got for us?
Yeah, so the way I made this was since I obviously like I was what or I was like 15 or 16 I think when he was hired. So I was fully invested in this rebuild. A lot of the trades early I actually liked like going in. Like the Pirates didn't have this star power to trade where you're going to get like two top 100 prospects in every single player. That just wasn't going to be the case. I actually liked some of the guys he got because they ended up developing in the top 100 guys. So I thought that was pretty cool. But a lot of them haven't worked out, unfortunately. Just the development wasn't there. But overall, I kind of based this based on how they produced at the MLB level. That's how I graded it. Because like they got guys that were top 100 prospects, sure, but if they don't produce at the MLB level, I can't say that they got such a high score on the trade because even if at the time it was good and maybe you can say back then that's still a good trade to make, I can't really rank it as an A. You know what I mean? So is there any way you want me to do this, Nate?
Um, Now whatever you want to do, just like listing them, I guess maybe best to worst or whatever way you want to do. That's
Okay.
up to you.
Yeah, so I can try to do this as quick as possible. I know we don't have too much more time. But I'll just go from best to worst. So for the best, I actually have the Bailey Falter trade. Trading Rodolfo Castro to the Phillies for Bailey Falter. I mean, in 2024, just a year and 2 months ago, we were all calling for Falter's head. Everyone was like, DFA Falter, make Luis Ortiz the fifth starter, or maybe have Skeen start on the opening day roster. He shut everybody up, and he's actually been very good. Last year, maybe a little bit average to below average, but this year he's on pace to be an all-star, which is crazy to think. But I gave that an A on the Pirates' part. I thought they did that very well for a guy that the Pirates were probably going to DFA, Castro. They were able to get a very good starting pitcher, or a good starting pitcher, I should say. I don't want to jinx him because he's off to a very good start, but I gave him a good grade on that. The next best, I do have Joey Bart as the second best because all they traded was Austin Strickland. I thought Pirates obviously did well with that, even though Bart did get DFA'd, so it wasn't like the Pirates were going to give up much to get him anyway. I still gave him an A- on that so far. I mean, just what he produced last year, and going into the season, he's your number 4 hitter. I think they did well with that. And then I'll go for the number 3 best, and maybe I'll do the 3 worst, so I'm not rambling on too much. But the third best I have is also an A-. I have, like I mentioned, the Pirates getting Isaiah Kiner-Falefa for Charles McAdoo from the Blue Jays. At the time, we were all skeptical. Like, all 3 of us were skeptical. Just because McAdoo was probably the most productive offensive player in the Pirates minor league system at the time. And with a team that really lacked offense, that's not something that we were looking forward to, especially a guy with IKF who we mentioned only had that half season where he was really productive. But right now, he's batting 300, something the Pirates haven't had since 2021 in terms of a player. And he probably is going to net more in the trade market this deadline despite having a year less of control than he did last year. But still, I mean, you can't complain about that trade. He's been very good for the Pirates, especially this season. So not too much to complain about. But I'll go with the 3 worst. The 3 worst, I kind of did it where it was bad at the time and it's still bad now. Like I'm not going to fault him too much on these trades that just didn't work out. That like obviously the Brian De La Cruz one didn't work out, but in my mindset, I'm like, well, the guys he gave up weren't much of prospects anyway. I get why he wanted to acquire a hitter. It just didn't work out. Whatever. I did have that as the 4th worst actually, but that's kind of how I made this. So the 3rd worst I have trading Robert Stevenson to the Rays for Alika Williams, and this is why I have that as the 3rd worst. Stevenson, even though he struggled at times, I mean, what hurt the Pirates the most was, other than maybe the inconsistent offense down the stretch, the bullpen really hurt that team to end the year, in my opinion. And Stevenson went to the Rays and completely just dominated. And I mean, I know now onto a bad contract, stuff happens, but at the time, I mean, he could have really helped the Pirates maybe be more competitive. Remember, that team won 76 games, won 14 more than the year prior, and guys like Jack Sawinski and David Bednar, that was the last season where they were guys that you could trust in the situation they were put in. So you kind of look at that. Maybe they string a few more wins. Maybe that maybe pushes them to call Skeens up earlier on. Like, who knows? Like, if you have a guy like Stevenson in that bullpen to maybe take the place of whenever Moreta was struggling, whenever Holderman started struggling a little bit, like whenever these guys start struggling, Stevenson coming in and dominating. I mean, I think that could have helped. So that's kind of where I put that in. The second worst I have is the Clay Holmes trade. I was so happy whenever this trade happened because Diego Castillo, he was an advanced bat. I thought he improved so much from what he did 2 years ago before the COVID season where the minor leagues wasn't happening. And I know Hoyt Park was DFA before, but he still was a tremendous AAA hitter. He provided positional flexibility for a pitcher that really was never highly regarded in the Pirates system, who wasn't off to a great start as a reliever. And the worst case scenario happened where Holmes just dominated right away for the Yankees, and both of the guys that the Pirates got were gone after 2022. Like that, obviously that's tough. Like that's not the greatest situation in the world. And the worst I have is the Josh Bell trade, and this hurt me. For the Nationals and the Pirates got Will Crowe and Eddie Yean. This hurt because like Josh Bell was my favorite player whenever Pedro Alvarez was gone. And I really love this 2019 season. We never see guys hit 30 home runs with consistent power and driving in runs like that. And he just came in and was so good. And the Pirates just unfortunately traded him at the worst time. They could have traded, like Cherington could have traded him after 2019 off a career year. Or he could have waited until the 2021 deadline when, the COVID season doesn't happen. But he did trade him in 2020 where Bell had easily his worst season. I think we can all agree on that. And he just didn't net the value that they probably could have had if they traded him at a different time. And guys like Will Crowe and Eddie Yean, like, you could see some of the potential they may have had. But Will Crowe, I think there was so much of a limited ceiling he had despite, and I think at one time he was undefeated as a starting pitcher for a little bit in the minors. But Eddie Yean I was a little more hopeful for, but he kind of more profiled as a relief pitcher than a starting pitcher, really, because he threw hard. It was just more likely he would be injured as a starting pitcher. But those were the three best I have and the three worst. I don't know if you have any questions. Maybe, Nate, if there's a trade you want me to kind of analyze, I'm more than happy to. But if not, that's kind of how I justified that.
No, yeah, I largely agree. The only reason, like I said, I would have the Brian De La Cruz trade higher in terms of the worst was just because we were like thinking of it. Your criteria was different than mine, obviously. I was just thinking of like just in the moment, you're trying to get to the playoffs, right? That was the goal. They're right there
Right.
for a playoff spot, and you bring in De La Cruz, who you knew coming in was like the worst on base percentage guy in the National League, and predictably was still the worst on base guy in the National League, but also didn't hit well at all and provided very little power. It was just his production with Pittsburgh in a time that they really needed him to hit some homers and drive in some runs for this team late down the stretch was I just in terms of the impact I think it had, and now the domino effect because now they're 76 and 86 again, and then they go into this year, and now we know the season they've had now. So, but I largely agree. I think the Robert Stevenson one, I kind of agree, but and obviously hindsight's 2020. Now the Angels gave him a huge contract, which you can understand giving him a pretty nice contract after the Rays when he was so good, like you mentioned, dominant. But just the huge contract for a reliever
Yeah,
off
it's
of one
risky.
half after half of a good season with the Rays, and uh, and he's just been hurt so much. He came back like 2 weeks ago, and then he got hurt like 3 days later. It just sucks for the Angels, but I think that was a bad trade. I don't know if I would have had it as high, but I can agree with because he wasn't he was very average still with the Pirates. Or maybe slightly above average, I think, because I think he had his moments for sure. Much better than when he was in Colorado or Cincinnati or whatever. But Yeah, and then the Josh Bell trade, of course. Yeah, Cherington traded him. If he trade anybody, 2020, and obviously after 2020, and obviously the Joe Musgrove trade as well, but like everybody was at like their lowest value because it was just an awful hitting season for the everybody underperformed that year. It was crazy. So but yeah, the return like Will Crow, just looking at him like when the trade happened, it was like, you know, he's an average guy, I guess, and he turned out to be nothing more than a mediocre innings eater for the Pirates as a starter. And I like Will Crow, but that's just like kind of what it was. And Eddie Ean, I agree. Like I remember seeing him, I was like, oh, he might turn into kind of a back end of the bullpen kind of guy who could provide something for us. But even if that happened, it wouldn't have been good enough return for Josh Bell. So I think obviously that one is one of those where it's like the timing maybe more than anything was what kind of killed that trade because you didn't get as much value as you could have. You didn't do like what you did with Marte, where you trade him at the end after 2019 season and get, you know, a better haul. We thought, even though that trade didn't turn out to be the greatest either. But yeah, I think if you trade him after 2019, you might get a pretty significant package because, like you mentioned, what he had 36, 37 homers that year.
Hmm.
And he was just hitting them into the river, and it was that was certainly his peak of his career. And he was in the home run derby and everything. It was like a great time. But yeah, I largely agree with you. And Cherington, we got to give him credit. He has had his moments. He's had some good trades. Obviously, the IKF trade we like. We liked it a lot more now than initially. Obviously, with McAdoo underperforming this season. And obviously the Bart trade, no matter what happens, that was a complete steal of a trade for the Pirates. So good list, and he has a much more expansive list. Maybe one time we'll go through like all the trades. I
Yeah,
think that maybe like in the off season of baseball, that would be like a fun exercise.
and
But
I'll do updates to it for sure because there's
yeah,
guys that I have this year like Chase Sugar, it's like stuff like that. Like we have to see at the end of the year.
and probably Charrington will be the manager or the GM still for a while, so they'll make more trades, and they may be a disaster. They may be average, who knows? But
Hey, maybe in the off season I do Huntington's as well. That would take a long
and
time
then
though.
we'll
In the
do
GM for like
Littlefield, and then
12
we'll
years.
go down the list.
Yeah,
We'll do them
yeah.
all. But that'll do it, I think, for this episode. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe, like, and subscribe to our channel where we're trying to produce good content stuff. And make sure to follow us on Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok, and no episode next week, I don't think. I'm gonna be on vacation. Maybe I mean I don't really want to think about the Pirates on vacation, but maybe if they're having like a great if they get like a winning streak going, I may or may not hop on or something
He may or
from.
may not come back because if he's on vacation while they're doing well, he might not be
I
able to
might
come back to
I'll
Pittsburgh.
stay on vacation. It's a very nice place I'm going to. I'll be at the beach talking about Pirates baseball on a winning streak. I'll be doing it for a month. I'll stay there a month. The Pirates go 20-10 and they're back in.
Oh yeah,
Or that
that would
wouldn't
be
even
that
do it.
would be awesome. I would love
That
to see
would
that.
be. But thank you, Jake, for everything today. Without we made it without Pirate Payne here with his opinions, which are mostly solid, but he has his moments.
Eh,
But
we all have our bad takes, so I'm not gonna fall them.
yeah, I'm just trashing him because his circumstances today. But anyway, that'll do it. Thank you for tuning in, and see you next time.